Okay guys, let's do another beat now. Let's do this peanut vendor I've been talking about. This is a peanut vendor. That's a peanut vendor. And this is a peanut vendor. Yeah, that's a peanut vendor. But when we talk about peanut vendor in reggae, you don't have to do the actual peanut vendor bass line. It's about a technique really, right? So look, let's pencil in an empty 1-bar region on the drum track. Put cycle range around it. Let's get the tempo up to 82, a bit faster for this. Right, here we go. Let's get a beat together. Now, I'm gonna start with the hi-hats. Let's go with the brush tool, quantize set to 16ths. I'm going to brush in a row of closed hats. Select them all, make them shorter, which, as I keep saying, just gives me a nice gap between them. It doesn't make it play back shorter, the hi-hat. Push the velocity of those up to about 100, 101. Then I'm going to get the velocity tool, hold down shift and select every other hat. I lower those right down to like 5 or 6, really low, like that. I'm going to knock out every 4th hat in each quarter beat, like that, and then every 3rd hat in each quarter beat, every 2nd 8th. I'm going to push it to the pedal. Select them all and lower them down to 70 something, so they're a bit lower. Okay, like that. Right. Now let me just set a default note length and velocity. I'll just pencil in a note, set its velocity. I'll go with 101, adjust its length. That is now my new default note length and velocity when I pencil in from this point. Okay. Now what makes it a peanut vendor is the missing 8th. Alright, you miss out the first 8th and a kick drum and a bass line come in on the 2nd 8th. Boom, bam, boom. Gap, and then a drop on the second drop on the 4. There's your peanut vendor. Boom, bam, boom, like that. Boom, 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 and that's what makes a peanut vendor a peanut vendor. The missing 8th, kick, snare, kick is the opening, an 8th late, and the first 3 notes of the bass line go with that kick, snare, kick, and an 8th late. That's a peanut vendor. If you say to a drummer in a reggae band, do a peanut vendor, he's going to go boom, down, boom, like that. And then you put your bass line to match. As long as it's got the opening 3 notes with the kick, snare, kick, and 8th late, right? So, then often you'll put in a kick there on the 3, on the first beat of the 2nd half of the bar, and that gives this nice push into the 2nd half of the bar. This gives it the oof into that 2nd half of the bar. Boom, baff, boom, oof, baff, oof, baff, oof, oof, baff, like that. Okay. Now then, let's put an empty region on the bass track. So now if you are doing an actual peanut vendor bass line, I'm going to work an octave higher in the bass so it's easier to hear the pitch here. Okay, you've got to come in an 8th late with the kick, and the peanut vendor is like that. And then now that is a peanut vendor actual bass line, but as long as you come in an 8th late with 3 opening notes of your bass line on the kick, snare, kick, that's still a peanut vendor. Okay, so I'll give you an example of a peanut vendor derivative bass line. Yeah, there was a band, I knew the drummer back in the day in Hackney, and they did some sessions at a Rewa with this singer. I've got a rough mix of on cassette somewhere of the stuff. And one of the songs this singer had, the opening to the bass line was like this, and it was a peanut vendor. like that. Opening 3 notes, an 8th late, kick, snare, kick, but a 4th note on that 3rd beat, pushing into the second half of the bar. Baff. Oh, baff. Okay, that's how the bass line opened. Now, yeah, you can resolve a peanut vendor bass line in 1 bar. It's tight because the bass line always starts an 8th late. But I could resolve this bass line in 1 bar. I could do something like this. Like that. Yeah, or I could do a little, I could do a double 16th push there to push it at the end. So yeah, you can resolve a peanut vendor in 1 bar, but it's often nice to bounce off a 4th note here on the 3 into that second half of the bar and leave it empty, so it really accents the drop on the 4. Boom, 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 bam, and then finish your bass line in a 2nd bar. So your bass line is 2 bars long, and that's what this band did. Let's double everything up. Right, so here's the bass line over 2 bars, and to finish the bass line, as long as it begins with a peanut vendor, it's a peanut vendor. You don't, if you are resolving it over 2 bars, your bass line resolves in the 2nd bar. The 2nd bar doesn't have to do the same peanut vendor thing, missing the 8th and coming in with 3 notes on the kick, snare, kick. So what the bassist did to finish the pattern in the 2nd bar was he came in a semitone up with a double 8th push right on the 1st beat of the next bar, like that. And then to finish it, like this. That looks about right. Let's just see that. Yeah, but that's a longer note like that, and that's a longer note there like that. So that was the bass line. Okay. Now, because the bassist chose to finish the bass line off in the 2nd bar by coming in with a double 8th push at the beginning of the 2nd bar, the drums and bass always work together in reggae, right? So the drummer then modified his kick drum in the 2nd bar to work with the bass. So here's the 2nd bar of the drums. What the drummer did then was he put in a double 8th kick to go with that double 8th push on the bass, took that note out, and at the end did a boom boom on the kick and snare to go with the bass. So now the kick drum is working with the bass line in the 2nd bar. Buff, buff, baff, buff, buff, baff, buff, like that, working with the bass, yeah? The only thing is just lower the velocity of that note because it's skipping into that snare, so that wants to be less in velocity. And that is a reggae beat in its own right, yeah? Okay? So there's the whole thing. And the drums in the 2nd half work with the bass line, which is not doing the peanut vendor, because you don't have to for the 2nd half of the bass line, as long as it's got the peanut vendor at the intro of the bass line, missing 8th, 3 bass notes with the kick, snare, kick. Like that. Okay, now, but if you're doing a peanut vendor derived bass line starting with the peanut vendor like over 2 bars, yeah, the 2nd half in the 2nd bar can also repeat the peanut vendor motif, missing 8th, kick, snare, kick with 3 bass notes. I could finish this bass line off, change it, so I do this. Boom, 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 boom. that say? Yeah? And now I've resolved the bass line in the second bar by repeating the peanut vendor motif at the beginning. Missing eighth, 3 bass notes, boom, 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 like that. Okay, but because I've changed this now to a peanut vendor motif at the opening of the second bar of the bass line, I'll go back to the drums in the second bar and switch those back to doing a classic peanut vendor intro, which is missing eighth, kick, snare, kick, and that now matches my bass line in the second half of the pattern in the second bar. Now these two kicks could come out, that's more like a classic thing. Or they could be left in. Still works. Or I could vary it so this pair of kicks comes in every other bar or something. I'll leave them in. So now I've modified the bass line to a new bass line with a double peanut vendor motif in each half. Like that. Okay, there you go. Okay, now let's get the guitar in. Before we do that, let's get this bass line down into a deeper register or deeper key or whatever the phrase is. Bring it down to a lower A. Like that. There we are. It's a bit deeper now. It's down an octave. Okay, and let's get the guitar in. If you're just dropping into this video from YouTube, this is part of a playlist all about reggae for, making reggae for people who are unfamiliar with it or beginners to it. And what we're doing now is we're just going through a whole bunch of reggae beats, okay, to look at different reggae beats. And for each one we do, we just put a simple rhythm guitar going chap, chap like that. Once we've gone through a whole bunch of beats, then we'll look at things like keyboard, etc. But we just put a basic rhythm guitar with each of these beats we're looking at. And by the way, the first video in the playlist shows everything we setting up the drum kit designer to give us a reasonable reggae kit sound. We could get a better kit using custom samples, but we're just using the drum kit designer that everybody has who's watching this. And in the first video we showed how to set it up to get a reasonable reggae sound, set up the auxiliaries for the echo and the reverb, etc., and also set the bass and the guitar track up. Right, so let's get the guitar chaps in now. Put an empty region on the guitar track. Okay, so the guitar chaps, they fall in the middle of each quarter beat. Right. Chap, chap, like that. So we're in A for the bass, so come in the middle of this quarter beat. A minor. Like that, and then we'll just copy that chord into the middle of each other quarter beat. There, there, and there, like that, and then just shorten them all to make them really chappy. Okay, these chords got to go down to E. Now, if you drop a chord down like that and when you're doing a track and you think it sounds too low relative to the previous chord, just get the root note, which in this case is E, it's an E minor chord, and bring it up to an octave higher. It's the same chord but with the root note an octave higher. That sounds much nicer, yeah? Okay, let's copy that guitar region across and then finish up the guitar in the second half. Okay, here, and where does the bass go to? F to G. Right, so these two chords want to go to F, major, then to G. Now we brought up the root note of that E chord up an octave higher, so the bottom note is the flat third of the E, which is the major third of the, or the flat third. I can't remember if it was a major or minor chord, but the G's at the bottom. This is the previous E chord. So just I want this to be a major actually, and that's giving us G major. There it is, and there's the whole thing, like that. Let's look at the bass while it plays. There you go, there's the whole thing, a new bass line. And it's a peanut bender because of the missing eighth kick, snare kick with the 3 notes of the bass line. But this is a double peanut bender because in the second half of the bar, in the second half of the bass line, in the second bar, it's repeating the same peanut bender motif. Boom, 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 like that. Okay, and there it is. And just to show you, if we go to the drums now, we're using a regular snare for this, but this could be a side stick. And, you know, and I can put in some of them offbeat things like we looked at in the stepper. You know, you can do all them little licks, and the thing about reggae is, once you learn the fundamental beats and principle of it, you mix and match stuff, right? Okay, let's put these back to the snare. And the other thing is, of course, this is a beat in its own right, the peanut bender. Missing eighth, boom, ba, boom, like that. It's a beat in its own right, but it can be used as a variation beat in another reggae beat. Like if you had a straight ahead reggae beat, which would be like boom, bam, boom, boom, bam, boom, bam, a boom, boom, bam, like that. Then this peanut bender could be used as a variation like this: boom, bam, a boom, boom, bam, boom, bam, boom, boom, bam, boom, bam, boom, boom, bam, boom, bam, boom, boom, bam, like that. Yeah. Okay, so it's about mixing and matching, right? Okay, so there you go. Now we got our whole thing now. There's our bass line, right? Now you're not going to plonk away at the bass line exactly the same for each cycle of the bass. Okay, you normally put a variation in here or there, and where you normally put your variation in is with 4 cycles of the bass line, you put the variation in on the 3rd cycle and the 4th cycle, or just the 4th. Okay, but we've got to remember here, we've got a 2-bar bass line. So if we look up here, look, 2 bars, that's 1 cycle of the bass line. 4 bars, that's 2 cycles of the bass line. 6 bars, that's 3 cycles of the bass line. 8 bars, that's 4 cycles of the bass line. So if I'm going to put a variation on the bass line in the 3rd cycle, it's going to be here in the 5th and 6th bar, because that's the 3rd cycle of the bass line, because the bass line's 2 bars for each cycle, right? So here I'll do a climb up. If in doubt, do a climb up, yeah. Right, and then for the last cycle of the bass line, 4th cycle, bar 7, 8, at the end here, I'm going to bring this little lick at the end, which is G. I'm going to go up and do an E, like that. And then I'll just modify the guitar, the last 2 chords, to do an E. Minor, like that. And that resolves it, coming round to the beginning again, like that. Okay. Okay, and then we'll just put a little fill at the end. Not a big fill, but a little fill. I don't know what to do here. Never heard of peanut vendor with a fill in it. Actually, I mean, when I say that, I mean that Gregory Isaacs little bit of that track I played you. I mean, that is sort of like the reggae peanut vendor. I mean, loads of people have done a version of that. I mean, Marcia Griffiths did a version, other people did a version. It does not have a drum fill in it, but let's just do something really simple. Just do a little fill at the end of this, the last half of this final bar. We'll just do a little roll in like this onto the louder snare like that, and then come off that snare onto the high tom like that, and then off that high tom onto a couple of mids, and then onto the floor tom. Like that. Okay, and then just velocity these up nice and strong. And that snare. And we're coming off the roll into that hard. And space them out a bit more like that. Just velocity that one down a smidge. There you go. And then we'll just come off that slice into the fill. There it is. There's the whole thing, yeah. Peanut vendor. Okay, there's the drums. But it's, it's the, as you've seen, what makes the peanut vendor. The peanut vendor is the missing eighth at the beginning, followed by kick, snare, kick. And the bass line, the opening three notes of the bass line go with that, an eighth late. Yeah, bish bash bosh, right? So there's another one for you, the peanut vendor, and I'll see you for the next beat.